Wow, what a bummer. No idea why.
Okay. For some reason, the record option's not triggering for me. Why is that?
Well, now it's red record, so I'm not sure we're recording anyway. But
Oh, that's good. That means you're recording.
yeah, but I mean, it got just randomly disconnected.
Yeah.
That's too bad. It was some good juice in there. I liked it, and I don't want to
Oh,
waste.
we can restart if we want, or tackle different bits if you want.
Well, okay. I mean, okay. So it's recording. What? Just for if can we take this and shrink and edit it after? Is it easy to do?
Reasonably easy to do. Yeah,
Okay,
you
so
can just
okay,
It just basically when you press the red button again, record again, it'll ask you if you want to save it locally. At which point you can just do that, and
right.
then it's an editable video file.
Okay, so and what if it's disconnected? What happens then?
If it's disconnected, press that button, save what you've got, and then refresh.
Okay, and we can consolidate the files.
Yeah. Okay. Just trying to check. I'm not seeing any errors here, but I'm trying to.
No, I think I've noticed it on Zoom calls or in Microsoft Meeting after X period of time. It's just something like I don't know what it is. It's not like I'm not,
It's bizarre as it may seem. It's quite possibly something overheating.
oh, I got it on a pedestal. We're on a pedestal,
right.
and
It'll be what there is the modern chips have dedicated hardware for certain tasks like video encoding and decoding. And that's like a little subset of transistors sitting on the chip somewhere, and that specific little tiny piece can get too hot. It's can happen.
I don't know what to say. So, do we start this again? And okay, before we hit we're going to edit.
What I'm wondering is, give me a second and let me see if I can cast this. That's the issue. Right.
I guess Joel knows I'm on a call with you. How's it going?
I mentioned to you this bit. He and I we chat through the day because we're in the same time zone. So we usually talk Saito or food, one or the other, or both. So
you're on the same DNA here, that's for sure. All right, so how do we jumpstart this? I mean, I thought all of it was good juice that we had. I liked that whole interview. It's a crime.
Yeah.
It's like you write an exam and after you write it, you couldn't write it again.
It's telling me, please check your browser permission. Can't start stream without any media. Okay. I'm not sure why I'm getting that message. So if we can record from your end, that would be good.
Well, yeah, we're 3 minutes and 57 seconds. Can I take this whole thing and shove it into iMovie and play with it after?
Absolutely.
That's great. Okay, so that's great. I'm pretty good with that. I can play with that.
Yeah.
All right, so should we start it again? And worst case,
let's do that. I shouldn't be too long, but let's do that and let's make sure we can.
Hey, Arnold Shuchat here. I'm a tech enthusiast, but a lay person, and tonight I'm with Richard Parris, a co-founder of Saito. Saito is working on revolutionizing blockchain technology. Now that won't mean anything to a lot of people, but the purpose of our discussion tonight is to shed light on Joe Average, so we can understand what's going on. Because what I've learned was when I was a kid, and I was reading the newspaper. I'm dating myself here. They don't tell you today the Vietnam War started and what it's about. You pick it up in the middle somewhere, and it's been going on for so long. And at some point, it's like, who's going to tell me the whole story? Because the war's been going on for 10 years. How did it start? They can't tell you that every day. So what we're going to try to do today is bring it out. Is how do we got to where we are today? And I'm going to consult. We're doing this interview second time, tech issues, but I think before we cut off, we came to the conclusion that the way the web started was that people got interested. There were platforms available for you to tailor your personal interests, like Yahoo, and you could set up a portal and get your baseball scores, and you could even add your stock portfolio. And wow, how cool was that to be able that they were providing you a front end office that you could feel organized and connected and get all the news. And you know what? If you're not paying for the data, you're the product. That's what we came to the conclusion is And by putting all this stuff on your screen and wearing your heart on your sleeve, someone was saying, "Look at that! The guy's into stocks. He needs a broker. Let's get him out." The right side of your computer was lighting up, and people were paying for the information, the free data that you were that you were putting out there. And this was whether it's Google, it's Yahoo, it's MSN, you name it. And so you might have seen some of the even Apple started ads on their phone that where people are going through and there's someone in their back pocket, like everybody's leaning on you like a parasite. And it is getting to the point that no matter what you do, if you Google something, you're going to have tons of pages. Like somebody out there knows I'm into an electric car because it just doesn't stop. So
Yeah.
what do we? There's a theory that maybe instead of having to go to an oligarch who controls all this data because we've given it to them, maybe we can do things on our own and go peer to peer. And we had this little discussion, and we said, when it comes to money, you think because you've got the money in your bank account, it's cool, but you can't take 100,000, go to the Rolls Royce dealership and say, "Here's the cash." No way. You got to get the approval. The bank's going to want to know what it's for. You can't go across the border. You've got money laundering laws everywhere, and bank reporting. They want to know everything about you. And people, I think, are getting tired of everybody knowing about them. And the one example we gave, or I gave, and Rich is going to take off with this a little bit more on the tech side, was there's wars out there, and people are seeing things coming to their way, whether it's Ukraine and tanks on the border, and they say, "Look, I've got to get out of here, and I can't sew diamonds into my socks like they did, 75 years ago, and I can't take cash because I'll get looted at the first checkpoint. I'm really, from a risk standpoint, I can't carry it on me." Whoa! All of a sudden, something comes up called a digital asset. In the history of mankind, nobody's ever been able to send.
Funnily enough, the other resort that you would have had back 75 years ago, if you had that kind of resort, would have been a numbered account, right? Which has also been taken away, funnily enough.
They stole those too,
Yeah.
So I think there's never been a time in history where you could send from person A to person B like $1 million, and they could get it and say thank you, because it wasn't digital. You can only e-transfer $3,000 a pop, depending on the bank. So now it can be done without anybody knowing, and it's secure. So how does that open the world up? And that's just on the banking side. This is just one use of blockchain technology. So maybe you'd like to talk about that and where we're heading.
I think the kind of, there's a lot to unpack in what you've just said, but I think I'll start abstract and then maybe try and get a little bit more specific quickly. The abstract side of it, the abstract picture is both in that Web 2 example you gave of that Yahoo account, right? You have an account. And in the bank case, you also have an account, right? And the commonality there is that somebody else owns your identity. So your bank account has your name on it, but it doesn't actually belong to you, right? The contents of that account can be controlled in a variety of ways by someone who's not you. And similarly with a Yahoo account or a Google account, or it could be a Steam account, for gaming, whatever, you're in exactly the same position. There's a power imbalance between you and the gatekeepers of the thing you're getting access to. And that turns into various sorts of suboptimal situations. Now, people aren't just walking into this. If there was no point in having a bank, if I didn't get anything out of having a bank, I would literally just keep cash under my mattress. And there are people who have and continue to do that because it's a better alternative for them. Similarly, there are people who don't have any or have very few online accounts because talking to the people around them and you're communicating in an analog way is perfectly fine by them. But for most of us, we want to do more than that. And the issue is that when we go online, we just don't have choices, right? The people who provide those services have worked out that by gatekeeping, they can profit. Now, they're companies by and large, so they need to profit, but they haven't got any other models that they would choose to implement either. So what you see is that account everywhere where somebody else is controlling what you can do. And that leads to the whole tracking economy, right? Because there's more and more, there's a growing movement, I think, to get away from this with things like Patreon and people subscribing to podcasts, etc., instead of, participating in streaming services and things like that, which are doing exactly what you're saying. Every time you move 2 inches online, somebody's tracked and tried to resell that piece of information. And the reason that's happening is because they're providing all these services that don't have a revenue stream, but they've got you pinned down and you can't get out. And so they can then create this environment that you don't like, but it's the only one you've got access to. And I think you're right. People are seeing that in terms of overreaching control in terms of banking and stuff, as well as just pure rent seeking. We were talking before about some of the costs involved with banking. They sit on your money for 5 days and charge you $100 to move money that cost them. It took their systems 15 milliseconds and cost them 0.2 cents. And you see the same thing online when you watch one of those ads that was supposedly highly targeted towards you. The advertiser's paying 30, 40, 50 cents for the view, and you're getting almost nothing. You're getting what, 30 seconds, 15 seconds of web browsing time, which costs the providers, I don't know, it's a frighteningly small fraction of a cent. So you've got all of these places where you've got this inequality, where you have to go cap in hand to ask for an account, to ask for permission to join, to ask for permission to send your money around. And there's nothing you can do about it, because without having a secure identity, without having a secure account online, you're stuck. And so what people have seen very quickly with the crypto side of things, with the monetary side of things, is, oh, wait a minute, that's no longer true. If I want to send my cousin in the Philippines $1,000 for his wedding, or $1,500 for his wedding, or $15,000, or whatever sum I want, nobody can stop me if I have that as crypto and they've got a wallet, right? That's
Here's another one.
Something people are really feeling now.
I sent it to you on my list, but the other one was like, there was a bunch of people that didn't want to take vaccines because they said, look, I'm in a truck and I'm by myself all day. I don't talk to anyone. And it's a huge industry. A lot of people are crossing the border. We don't want to have to take and you have to take a vaccine. They were ordered to. And they said, you know what? They marched on Ottawa. They drove to Ottawa. They created a convoy. It was seen all over the world. The capital city of Canada. And they clogged up the streets and they honked their horns for 3 days. And nobody in Canada, other than they were playing hockey in the intersections and curling and doing all this other stuff, but nobody knew what to do with them. So they invoked the Emergency Act, and they were able to confiscate bank accounts of like single moms that sent sandwiches and skip the dishes and Uber Eats and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, your money was secure. And the bank got an order from the government. They went after the wallet companies. The wallet companies said, you know what? We don't know who people are. Like the people who make the wallets. But they went after the banks, and the bank said, yes, of course we're going to do what you tell us. You're the government. And people's accounts were locked. Well, you got to worry about your own government sometimes. Like, this is just an example. It was seen all over the world. What a breach of property right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not super sympathetic with truckers in that case, but I'm a WikiLeaks donor, right? Like it's pick whatever side of whatever fence you sit on, whoever you are. This is a problem, right? And I think that's the important thing to me. It's a friend of mine in the military once, sort of saying to me, look, everybody's got secrets. He doesn't want everybody in his social circle to know that he's in the military, because there's people who really dislike that, and that's, according to the government, about the most respectable job you can have. So I think whichever position, wherever you look at these things, it's the fact that arbitrarily bureaucratic systems can decide to do these things, as can companies, right? A company can deplatform you and take all of your photos or whatever it is you feel like you've entrusted them with, without having to necessarily have any grounds. And similarly, the state can decide on arbitrary grounds to throw you into a lasso with people you may or may not agree with, and do things like exclude you from your own banking system. It's patently problematic.
So guess what?
There was a case.
Guess what? You know what? Before we started this call, you said we decided not to use Zoom that's controlled by a third party. So we'd have a 25-minute limit unless we paid, or Telegram or any of the other services which are hosted. And we are on a peer-to-peer call here through Saito. Now, Sato's set up a bunch of apps to sort of test, stress test its concept. But what's interesting was I had an anonymous account. I mean, I had an account too. I basically went in there and said, "Give us an email address. Here, make an email address like Arnold at Saito." That's it.
Yeah.
And apparently, I have a wallet right away.
Yeah.
And you don't know anything about me except I just Arnold. I'm Arnold at Saito, right?
I mean, you could be some guy called Fred who's just claiming to be Arnold. Like we
true.
literally don't.
That's right.
You don't know.
But if we played, I mean, with setting that up in my profile, Arnold at Saito, I can go play you poker now.
Yep.
Right. And we can. I mean, I'd have to put some money into that wallet by moving something onto the platform. But you know who I am, and you can't tell me I can't pay. I can't play with $1 million if I want to.
Well, the inverse of that as well is that I can play with you for $1 million without knowing who you are, right? So I don't need to know you're good for it or whatever. I can see the money right there on chain, right?
You get to see. So, you get to see what. Do you get to see what the other guy has, or no?
Well, no. That's the thing. If I didn't trust you, I could ask you for proof, right? So that's the thing with the blockchain, right? Like I don't have to know who key 7463, et cetera, is, right? But I can trust that the contents of that are what I'm checking they are, right? So I have a way of verifying. If we both say, look, we're putting a 500,000 on this game, then we can trust that we have the 500,000. But we can do that without having to know who the other person is, even, right? So to me, that's the big advantage. Is you could do all of those things. You could pay for your insurance without telling people who you are precisely. So you could insure your car without having to give any information other than which car it is. Right now, when you do that sort of thing, you find you're suddenly giving them all sorts of information for I'm not sure what reason.
Well, they can sell you other stuff. Do you have a house? Do you have a bike?
I know what they want. I'm not sure what the nominal reason is that I'm supposed to be giving it. So that to me is the big thing, is that you have the ability to act in a sovereign's an overused word in some parts of the industry, but in a sovereign way, right? I can do what I want on the network without gatekeeping, without permission. So it's open and in that it's permissionless. And you can interact with me in all surety that the entity you're interacting with continues to be the same, right? So if it's really important to you that you know that I am actually me, then you'll need to verify that in some off-chain way, because there isn't another way of doing that in all the world. There's no way, that we're not part of our computers. But if you receive a series of messages from my key, you can validate that future messages from that key are from that key forever. So if a wallet says it's good for some money, you can check that and you know that it's true. This is a step up, because those are the sorts of ways that it's all of these things that are difficult to do that are the ways that those early internet companies turned the services they provided into the oligarchy you're describing, right? Oh, it's difficult to prove that you're good for something, so we'll create an escrow system and we'll create a payment system, and then we'll build a multi-billion-dollar business out of the fact that we're charging you 5% to send your money to someone.
PayPal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, PayPal was, if you remember the early days of PayPal, for people who tried to do anything vaguely online, it was a godsend. I set up a business that wouldn't have been able to easily start without PayPal back in the day, because we needed to pay people around the world, and it was a way of doing that, even though we were getting wrenched on like 5 and eventually we negotiated 3% fees, but that was on our whole payroll. That was brutal. Like now that there are other alternatives online, it just seems criminal that people are still doing that, right? And that's that shift, right? Without the ability to prove who you are online, you have to go to a PayPal and you have to pay them what they ask, because they've done all of the negotiating with the other gatekeepers to let you through.
So you've built this system. You're a co-founder of Saito, and I guess when you're looking around, you're saying, well, who else is doing peer-to-peer? And when someone looks at an exchange like Coin Market or whatever, they just see hundreds of these things, and some of them are just artistic drawings and they're NFTs. It's like they're buying cartoons, and it seems like the whole thing's they people have lost their mind. They were talking about a virtual city, the alternative, the metaverse, and yeah, you could buy a smoked meat sandwich shop there online and charge her like. I thought the world was losing their mind, like, and it was they were betting big time on. You haven't really heard much last 6 months to a year
Yeah.
about the metaverse. I don't know what.
Well, it's one of those things. So I mean, the industry now has meme coins, right? Cartoon. You don't even need the whole NFT series. You just got a cartoon dog in marketing, and you've got yourself a meme coin. I think there's interesting sociological things to ask ourselves about why that's taking off and what it is that people under 25 think like have more faith in a meme coin than the banking sector. Like that's a really interesting point. Why do they? Why? But in terms of actually looking seriously at the industry, I think these are the things to look at. There are scarce few well-intentioned projects out there whose intent is to build something real. And it's very hard amongst all of that noise to get your head up and show. One of the things I think you can look at is in the space who is actually, to your point, trying to build proper peer-to-peer. Like we see things like Web3 social media, quote unquote, but they're based on central servers. So they've got some of what we've been talking about. Okay, you don't have to hand over a login. You can use your keys. But in the end, the central server is still a node online that brokers everything. Whereas if you go to something like Red Square, we bootstrapped that because we had to build pieces part by part. But the idea is, and it's flourishing now, is something where you go to your peers for content. You don't have to go cap in hand to a central server. So the idea is that it's basically a protocol. It's a format for sending messages on the Saito blockchain, and anyone can read and write those. If people want to keep them private, they can encrypt them and only give the decryption key to whoever they want. Being Twitter-like, it's by default public, and anyone can build a reader and decide which part of that stream they take and which part they don't. So you don't have needs for things like centralized moderation. If I'm in charge of a stream of information, I personally want to make sure that it meets some standards I hold. And I feel like that's a reasonable thing for people to want to do. But I don't think that it makes sense to have an arbitrary corporation deciding where the public discourse needs to go, whether that's with encouragement from the state or otherwise. And so I think, this is obviously, to me, the better way of doing it. If you're worried about the information your children are seeing, parent them, work with other people in your community to make sure that there's a healthy stream of quality information available to them. And you could do that with something like the Red Square system, because you could say, well, we will give our children Red Square clients that require the content to be whitelisted by this group of parents. So we actually keep an eye on what's happening in the same way that we look, we keep an eye on where our children end up. We don't follow them 24 hours a day, but we certainly don't think it's fine if they end up wandering the red light district at 2 a.m. Right? Like we take responsibility and say that's not a safe place for a kid, and we manage that according to, the social and personal, morals we have. And I think that's a very different, something we've lost, right? There's this great habit in the Web 2 space for handing off responsibility for things, right? Oh, we'll make it Twitter's problem. Who's saying what, right? And like Twitter is somehow now responsible for like Nazi patrol, right? Like yes. Nazis are a real problem in the world, right? As a society, we need to deal with that shit. It shouldn't be a corporation in San Francisco that's somehow supposed to be fixing this problem, because they can't.
Well, how does what we do? I mean, that's a problem anywhere. Free speech isn't really free. What is Saito doing to solve that? I mean, we've got an even freer system here because nobody's moderating it, right?
Right. Well, I think that's the thing. The Red Square does give you a solution to this, which is not to silence people, but to give end users the controls they want right, to form communities or by themselves moderate and curate the content they're seeing, right? So Red Square allows for you to set up a group that is entirely closed off. You can have a group where not only do you dictate what is said, you can actually dictate the topic. So you
Would it
can
be a
say,
Facebook, like a Facebook page that is a membership group, but
right,
it's
you
not
could set up a group where you say, in this group, discussion that is not about model railways is not allowed, because that's what we're doing. This group is for talking about model railways, right? Similarly, you could say this is a group where no one will censor anything you say, because that's what we want in this group, right? The idea is not that, so if Saito runs a node, we will moderate that node, but we're not cutting stuff off the network, right? We're moderating and curating what we present on the web page, but we're not dictating to people what they can and can't do. Right? The point is, if you are a jerk or do anything beyond problematic, if you do anything criminal on Saito, you've cryptographically signed that you did it. Right? So you put your name to it and you've identified yourself, in as much as, like I was saying before, anyone can be identified online, right? You've actually taken cryptographic keys on your machine and you've created evidence that that was what was used to send this message, right? It's irrefutable. So police, if they're needed in such a case, should do real policing. They shouldn't rely on a database query to police people, right? If people are doing something negative, planning a plot or whatever, that's something that police have been dealing with for centuries, and they should do it using the proper methods. Do a sting operation, infiltrate the group, right? Turn one of them. That's what, that's a real human societal immune response to a problem like that.
That's a solution.
If we think we've killed it by stopping people from using Facebook, then we've just pushed it somewhere else. There's no actual societal strength against that problem being developed.
So Richard, I'm mindful of the time here. 27 minutes. And this is I'm just getting into it, and we're in different time zones. I want to carry this on. I'm gonna cull what we've talked about, but I want you to think about. I want you to play the imagine game.
Yeah.
Someone who's who's hoping this whole thing goes away so they can just go about their normal existence. Most professionals, like a dentist, does he need, you think about it, I played hockey with a whole bunch of dentists. They don't even know it. They couldn't put a PDF out there, like nothing. They're completely like, when it comes to like a spreadsheet, it's like, you do it.
Yeah.
Because that's not what they do, right? But you're talking people with assets, and this is a piece of technology. Entice, what I've seen in companies that do pitch, right? And let's say it's an AI company, they're so excited, they're so in deep with what it is, but they don't show me, hey, here's your life now. And when we get finished with you, because you adopt our product and invest with us, this is what your life is going to be like in the future. Yeah. This is how it's going to change. So I'd like you to just extrapolate. If things go your way, and what has to go your way in order for life to be different for someone who would adapt to using this technology, and how will that be better? What could they say, and why would it be worth it? So I wonder if you could just go that way.
So I think there's a few levels. In terms of the actual software itself and what it looks like, it can actually be simpler and easier to use, because you can have wallet apps that maintain your identity, that don't require passwords, that don't require interfacing with other people's systems just to own your own data, etc. So I think one thing that will happen is app design will actually get better. It's not going to be complicated crypto nonsense. It's going to be simpler. The way I can be confident of that is go and look at how it is to use Saito, right? There's everything you want there without the logins and the controls.
Oh, the logins drive me nuts as a human, honestly.
Exactly. This is an inhuman way of dealing with things. Okay, key management isn't super simple, but it's something that can be built out into operating systems and very easily handled. So to me, it will result in an improvement of user experience across the board. The other thing I think people will notice is everything gets cheaper. Now, that might be cheaper in terms of money, but it will also be cheaper in terms of the amount of time you spend watching advertising. Because if you choose to pay with your own money on Saito, the costs are going to be far, far lower, because they're just the real network costs of providing the service plus a fee that the service provider is charging. You're not leeching out to these insanely greedy middlemen in the advertising industry, the placement industry, the tracking industry, all of those people who are taking their cut out of your internet activity right now. Logically, in a Saito world, your ISP would pay you for your first hop rather than, i.e. connecting directly to them, rather than you having to pay your ISP for connectivity. So people will see that because we're eliminating middlemen and we're making stuff peer-to-peer and we're paring things down to a simple commodity market of providing the network, things will get a lot cheaper for users. They'll be wasting a lot less of their time and energy on things like advertising, because they'll either be able to pay a small fee themselves or watch a very minimal amount of advertising or engage with surveys and things, which will earn them more than sufficient to undertake all of their browsing and probably pay for things like music streaming and podcasts, etc.
So there's another way to look at it. Some people saying, that's it, I'm off social media, I've canceled this, I'm not doing TikTok, it's a total waste of time, it's blue light, I'm not sleeping. If we were to sort of sit down and log our human costs of interaction based on the ADHD that the system sort of infiltrate our brains with whatever we're interested in, like, oh, you want women, oh, you want the guys, and you filter that out because
I like that analogy, right? Because another thing is, right, simply if you need to send something as mundane as an email on Saito, it's spam free because no spammer can afford to pay network fees, right? So it's that thing.
We're not paying anything right now when I send something. So, like, I just logged in. I'm Arnold at Saito, or Shuchat at Saito. So is that it? Is someone sending? If you go into Gmail, you go to Shuchat at Saito.
At the moment, the network is allowing zero-fee transactions to bootstrap things, but we'll be pushing into a phase where we have like an ad faucet, so a tap where you can get some Saito to pay for those fees, a minimal amount. To sort of, that's a matter for us. It's a bootstrapping problem of spinning up the economy on Saito. So that is something that's in transition. But yes, effectively, if you're looking at that, how will the world change for me? One big thing is that everything will become cheaper. It becomes markedly cheaper just to handle these things via.
Well, right now, like, I don't consider that I'm paying an intellectual cost with Gmail, for example, right? Like when we say, like, at the end of the day, how much crap I've got, 29,000 piles of letters I got to delete in my system. It's garbage, and they're just tanking on me.
I like that ADHD way you put it, right? This thing. Spam is like this enforced ADHD, right? It's this thing that just injects itself into your consciousness for no reason and no benefit to anybody.
So I'm looking at
it's a good way of putting it.
There's a little microphone next to you on the bottom left of the screen. It says Swarm Skiing at Saito. Is that your email address?
That's the one for this browser. This is the one I use for. It's a clean browser, so it's the one I use for the Swarmcast, etc. So
where could I use it? If I went to Gmail and I typed a note to Swarm Skiing at Saito, would it get to you?
No, because that's the legacy email system, and this is Saito. So we could build a bridge. It wouldn't be very difficult. The question would be with forwarding them on. How would we police what comes in? Because if it's connected to
how would I use email, this? I mean, like, I've got I just put that in my profile. I put an email address in and a password. Now I'm in. Who's going to contact me that way with Saito now? That's a message system.
Right. So at the moment, we actually had an email module that was sort of like actually looked like email. We deprecated that a while ago because people weren't excited by email. So you can use chat or Red Square for the same purpose. So you can just DM someone. So literally you can message me. So if you click on my icon anywhere in the site, you can add me as a contact, which will also encrypt our any interaction between us.
What is your icon? I don't even know if I'm going to find you.
So if you see the two little colorful icons in the control panel.
What are we looking at? The two squares?
Yep. If you click on the brown one, you're the purple one, I'm the brown one. If you click on the brown one, you'll see a little menu pop up that'll let you add me as a contact.
Oh, cool.
Yep. And then that'll encrypt all of our transactions from in the future, and that will mean that I'm also appear in your sidebar, and you can send me messages encrypted whenever you want.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there
Again,
anything?
frictionless.
So we were saying in the future, have you got anything else to add? I mean, like, you could go on for hours, but I'm saying,
right.
excite
Well, I
a
think.
dentist, excite a dentist, excite a
Well,
vet.
I think the way you put it is excellent, right? I think the experience will get cheaper and better. That's the main thing. The ADHD will go away. I like that way of putting it. These interjections and these mad plays for your attention and this being stalked all the time, that will go away, and the actual cost of things will go down, because the main thing that most people will notice, if they're not attending to their privacy and their sovereignty and so forth, the main thing that they will notice is that things get cheaper and smoother. Right?
Yeah,
The
I said it
experience will
before.
be
I said it before. I gave
better.
the example before, and it was sort of like being on a. I played chess in the arcade
Mm.
on Saito, and I
Yep.
just played chess with my son, and after the game, and you can't cheat. You moved, and the team's over. Oh, I didn't take my finger off. All that stuff, like it's eliminated. Like as and in the gaming, the friction parts in the game, and
Yeah.
it's your turn or it's not your turn. And after the game was over, there was this sort of sense of calm. I got back to my computer, and there wasn't like all kinds of messages about like looking for a chessboard, like nothing.
Yeah.
It was if like there was a sense of calm, like I could get back to doing what I wanted. I wanted to do that,
Yeah.
and now I can get back to doing what I want to do now. It's like
Yeah.
there was no machine noise created because somebody tried to make $1 out of the fact that we played chess.
Right.
It was kind of
Right.
serene. It was surreal and it was serene. And like
Yeah.
that goes back to the. I don't mean to denigrate the ADHD with an ADHD because it's a serious sort of issue, but
Yeah.
we all get surfing like the classic thing. I'm sitting at my desk to do
Yeah.
something. Oh, an email came in. Clink. I'm over here, and you're trying to do
Yeah.
what you want to do, and all of a sudden you're diverted in 10 directions. And oh, there's an ad for something you really want to go boating more than you want to talk to Richard. Like, oh yeah, we should go boating. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
you guys get anything done, like with the amount of electronic stuff. But imagine how less efficient you would be developing Sato if you're on legacy systems, getting communications from.
I mean,
That's
it's
why you
been
developed your chat direct.
well. It's chat and this video call. We use these are daily drivers for us, and the reason is it's just so much more pleasant an experience. It works. It's
Can we
solid,
can we set
and
up profiles in the background like Zoom now? Like if I want, like people say they're on a beach or in a spaceship.
we did have a prototype of that feature, which we weren't getting a lot of requests for, so we didn't push forward. It's not super hard to do.
Sure.
We could do it if there's a big user need for it. I think blurring is actually probably something we should add, because for some people they're in a scenario where they don't necessarily want to show exactly where they are. So that's probably something that comes for bigger adoption, or when with larger adoption. The backgrounds and other things, I don't think we'll add the beautify stuff. I think we'll avoid
So
that.
finally, like just because I think we're going to
Yeah.
carry this on, and you can think about it. But
Yeah.
finally, a year from now, what's going to
Yep.
change? What do you think is going to be changing in your Sato world?
Oh, a huge amount's going to change, because we've just announced the ability to kind of ramp up the speed we can do the testing for all of the ATR, the automatic transaction rebroadcasting, and all of the consensus parameters, so that we can go towards what's become clear to us is that the primary thing that needs to happen for further growth, now that we've got the set of applications in place that we've got and we've demonstrated how to build on Saito, is that token permanence and data permanence on the network. So that is going to be the huge thing that changes, which will make it possible for all sorts of business related fees can be introduced, and all sorts of businesses that require either infrastructure or funding, or want to make a profit out of running on Saito, can really start stretching their legs. So I think I'm very excited for the next 6 to 12 months, because it's going to be a real change in the kind of tenor around things, from a sense of building and exploring to kind of people taking over and developers coming in and actually starting to use the chain in
I'd like to
earnest.
just add an analogy. when I started thinking about blockchain, they were talking about how much electricity it works with the
Yeah.
concept of proof of work. And I imagine going to a bowling alley and there's a pinball game, right? And as you
Yeah.
are the top score, enter your
Yeah.
initials. You enter your initials. I'm number one. I got 480,000. With a pinball machine, right? And the next guys. Now, if this is on blockchain, like you only really care about the guys who are the top five. You don't care about
Right.
who is the number 170,000, 10 million, and then you got to
Mm.
store this data for eternity. And
Yeah.
everyone's computer across the world. Like at some point, it's great that at some point you should be able to move that off your RAM into your some hard drive and archive it. And like
Yeah.
you don't need to be dragging the trailer of data around and adding one more link that's still connected.
Well, it's the thing for me. I think people worry a lot about the immutable ledger stuff. And going back to diamonds or something, or art, maybe there's some cases where like a permanent record of everybody who's owned this thing is useful. But for the most part, if I have a dollar bill, I don't need to know exactly who's handled that dollar bill through its history. And if I had to pay for a system that could keep that record in order to be able to spend that dollar bill, I wouldn't spend the dollar bill because it would cost more than $1 to spend it.
Well, we have legal precedent on that because in the olden days, if you wanted to buy property, you'd have to go to a lawyer and they would have to do a chain of title search going back. And then so they started a registry system and said, listen, to make this make sense, I can sell you something and it's valid between you and me, but to give effect to third parties, it's got to be registered, and the time that it's stamped is deemed the time that it's registered, and that they only have to look to that. You only have to look to that to prove your title. You don't have to go back to the chain to the dawn of time. What a waste of time that is. It was like a human blockchain before, analog human blockchain. So why? So do we do anything different in Saito that makes it more nimble than carrying around the world's history on every transaction?
Well, no, I mean, absolutely. That's what ATR is all about, right? So it's about saying for things that you need to keep the record, you can pay to keep that record live. But if you don't need to keep the record, for instance, if it's, who sold this house to the person who sold this house to the person who sold this house to the person who sold this house to me, right? Then I'm not planning to keep that around and nobody needs to, right? It's a way of saying, well, yes, you can see that validly that this transaction turned up, this title turned up in my hands, and I could prove that. So then everybody knows this house is mine to sell, but you don't have to keep all of those permanent records. That's one of the that's really the big advantage of Saito. And the idea that you can have this immutable blockchain because blockchain is patently absurd. If there isn't a fee for storing something, it's not really being stored, right? Because nobody's paying for it. It's not going to keep happening forever. You just can't trust it. And any blockchain that doesn't have that problem solved will eventually explode or be deprecated because the costs of running it will become more than the revenue from operating it.
I gave an example of in the contest you had draw a diagram. I had a picture of David, your co-founder, sitting on a lawnmower at a cemetery, and on the lawnmower, it's a tractor. It said "Perpetual Care," and he's driving around. And it was I asked AI to draw this. It was a series of tombstones. Did you remember that? Like, and he's driving a tractor, and
I do, yeah.
Like perpetual care. The universe is like a cemetery. You could pay for your plot, but who's paying to take care of the grass that you can get in there in the common areas of the strata or the whatever? Like it doesn't. It won't be. It'll be a kill. It'll be a killing. It'll be a field. It won't be a beautiful cemetery. And you've got to have something every time someone pays for a plot to be able to get to the plot. And there's flowers and like
that's a good way of thinking. That's a good way of putting it. If the fees for burial are only for the burial and then they're all used up, then you can be guaranteed at some point this will be a parking lot.
By the way, the driver of that tractor looked exactly like David. I thought it was like I pulled it out of heaven. It was perfect, and I never heard about it. I didn't win. Anyways. Anyway, well, thanks for your time, and I'm going to keep the questions coming, and hope we open a door here because this is completely
let's do this again
different
at some
level.
time. This is useful for people. I'd love to do another one. So let's plan on doing another one in a while.
Okay, to save this thing here, I'm going to hit the record button again, or what?
Yeah, hit the red one. It'll bring up a prompt